viewers, please show a thumbs up. Great. So, hi, I'm Shivani Meher from Indraprasth College for Women, University of Delhi, India.
Hi, I'm Sonali Shah. Hello, and I'm also from Indraprasth College for Women, India.
Hi everyone, it's really exciting. It's the first Millennium Fellowship webinar of class of 2019. Welcome to everyone. Keep introducing yourself. Type in your name, your university, and the country you are typing in from. So please continue that process.
For the next 15 minutes, we will have our moderated dialogue for around 15 minutes with Ms. Riccio. For the remaining 30 minutes, we will open it up for Q&A. So you can ask your questions to Ms. Riccio. Remember to mute yourself when you're speaking. Throughout the webinar, type your introduction in the chat box.
For those who have just joined us, welcome. Please introduce yourself by writing down your name, university, and country down in the chat box. It's wonderful seeing so many faces here from all around the world. Please, when the webinar is going on, please mute yourself so that no background noise is there. Thank you. So to start off today's talk, we would like to introduce Ms. Rebecca Riccio. We have all met her in the inauguration ceremony on 5th of September, which was really overwhelming for us. Now we are going to meet her again. So Rebecca Riccio is the founding director of Social Impact Lab at Northeastern University. Rebecca teaches undergraduate courses on non-profit management and philanthropy at Northeastern University. And she is also the academic advisor to the Learning and by Giving Foundation. She teaches consulting a wide range of local, national, and international non-profit organizations and foundations, and developing and managing health, education, technology programs around the world. She also serves as the MCN's Global Education Council.
Throughout her career, she has developed and managed cutting-edge projects, including the first federally funded teaching training program in the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, following satellite-based email networks connecting health facilities in Africa and Asia before commercial options became viable. The world's first massive open online course on experimental, which engaged through thousands of students around the world in awarding grants from the Buffett Family's Learning by Giving Foundation.
Welcome, Ms. Riccio. It's a pleasure having you today.
Thank you so much, Sonali and Shivani. Thank you for being our moderators. I so appreciate you taking on that responsibility. And to everyone who is here today, I know that many of you are getting up early or staying up late to be a part of this. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate you creating the space in your lives today for me to be with you. I also just want to thank MCN and United Nations Academic Impact for creating a program that brings all of us together, to share together, to learn from each other, and hopefully to figure out together how we can make the biggest difference in the world. I wanted to start by talking about the power of simply being in a shared space together. When I describe the Fellows Program to people, they tend to get excited about so many young people around the world doing work in their communities, learning, and I bring it back not to the individual maps on the points on the globe all over the world, but to the power of our community. And I want to emphasize that to you today, because I think each of us can have so much going on in our lives, such a sense of urgency, such a sense of responsibility, so many commitments to work and school and family and community, that we can lose sight of the bigger picture of who we are as the Millennium Fellowship community. Because while each of us is learning and each of us is doing good work, the power we have, if we think of ourselves as a global entity, I think is really something that we have yet to begin to imagine, the power that we can unleash. And so what is it that we all share in common? I think that that includes the values of empathy and humility and inclusivity. To me, just knowing that there are 1,000 of you now, and over the years there will be thousands of you more who believe in our mutual obligations to our fellow human beings, to the need to learn from and with and for each other, to try to gain the perspective of our brothers and sisters whose lived experience is different from our own, that we truly believe that all of us have an equal right to dignity and to productive and healthy lives. Knowing that those shared views are out there, I think binds us in ways that are simply extraordinary. I also think that learning together is an incredible opportunity, and knowing that you all have common skills that are coming from the curriculum, that you are all learning together about each other and with each other, and that there's this huge community of young people who actually understand what it takes to get the work of social change done in their communities is another unifying factor. And then finally, I want to encourage you in every opportunity that you can take advantage of through social media to build your network beyond your campuses with each other, because you are each other's greatest strength. And that power of your community is so amazing. And so I wanted to begin there by celebrating us, not just as individuals, not just as people executing projects, but as a community that will grow and grow each year as more fellows join this program. And with our shared values and our shared skill sets and our shared commitment to each other, what you can accomplish as a community inspires me every day. So I really wanted to start with that, and also wanted to just touch upon a couple of the points I know resonated with people at the at our convocation around systems thinking and ethical reasoning, because that is the heart of everything I believe in as a social change activist, as a social change educator, which is that the world is in many ways where it is today, with so much incumbent upon us to change, in part because we as humans are so good at creating complex problems, but we're not that good at solving them. And so I just want to stop and actually give us all a moment of reflection about the commitment that we can all make right now to becoming better problem solvers by becoming more mindful of how we think about what we see in the world and how we look at and diagnose problems. This is something that really quite nothing about us prepares us to do well. How our brains work, how our hearts work, how society works, how education works. Everything is working against us becoming the best problem solvers we can be. And I would like all of us just to make a commitment to recognize that and to think about how over the course of the rest of the time we have together this semester as fellows, we can all become better systems thinkers and better ethical reasoners. So Sonali and Juffali, with that, I think I'll stop and just let you ask me questions that you're eager for me to address, or if there's anything I've commented on that you'd like me to go into more detail with, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you so much, Riccio, for your as a Millennium Fellows, all of us are on the beginning stage of our social impact projects. So what is that one advice that you would like to give us to all so that we can carry on our project?
I think following on what I just said, what I would really like you to think about is, or what I'd like you to do, is step back from your projects for a moment and think about the issue or challenge or opportunity that you're trying to address in your community. And dig beneath the surface for a moment. Each of us perceives issues in a relatively superficial way. If you think of the image of an iceberg, what our brains incline us to see is the very top 5 or 10%. of an iceberg. But as you know, the bulk of the problem, the bulk of the iceberg is beneath the surface. That's where I want you to be thinking. Because if, in order to diagnose the issue you're trying to address, you need to see it in its fullness. And you need not to simply address that superficial visual aspect of it that's easy for you to perceive, but you need to be understanding what is creating this problem. Where are the social, cultural, economic, and other forces that are colliding to create this issue? It doesn't mean necessarily that you would go about addressing the problem differently than you already intend to. But it does mean that you'll be able to put the work that you're doing in the context of these other forces and make sure you're anticipating what can go wrong. Make sure you're seeing all the opportunities. Make sure you understand all of the stakeholders who are affected, all of the individual people who are either working on this problem, affected by this problem, have power over this problem, so that you're not pursuing your solution in a vacuum of the context in which it has emerged and in the context in which you have to solve it. Because there are a couple of risks in doing that. The first risk is simply that, if you imagine our iceberg again, that you're simply chipping away at the surface of something. And you know what happens when you chip away at the top of an iceberg? More floats up. So we want to avoid being superficial. We want to make sure that the way we're doing the work is not going to have unintended consequences. We want to make sure that we're anticipating, because we've worked really hard on getting perspective and context, that we're not inadvertently doing something that could cause harm to somebody, or that could disempower somebody, or that leaves someone's voice outside of the room, right? We want to be as inclusive and comprehensive, and we want to preempt the ways in which we can unintentionally be wasting time, be wasting resources, or worst case scenario, doing harm. And so what that involves is, it can be difficult because we're all excited about our ideas, we're all excited about our projects. We have to put that excitement aside for a minute and be very thoughtful and critical and open-minded. Be humble about the way we're thinking about the work, so that we're as open as we possibly can be to seeing the opportunities and the potential obstacles and the unintended, all of the noise, all of the things that can be happening in these very complex worlds we live in that we haven't really factored into our thinking. If you do that, if you give yourself that little space to do it, I think what you'll find is your own excitement about your project may actually even increase, because you're able to see it in this bigger context, and that you may see opportunities that you would have missed, or that you see risks that you might have missed. And so you'll be spending your time as effectively as possible.
Thank you so much, Riccio, for your comment.
Thank you for mentioning the point, what we share in common objective, and we do not work in vacuum. I think that's a very great way for the Millennium Fellows to relate and make that tangible connection, as well as a great way to lead into the following question. There are more young people in the world today than ever before. From your experience, how can we as youth be advocates for the SDGs? Through and after our Millennium Fellowship project, how can young people spark change in their community?
This is an excellent question. And I'm going to answer again from the perspective of systems thinking, okay? When you think about what makes the world change, it almost always is the convergence of many things happening at the same time, where forces are moving progress in the same direction. So let's think about how change happens and what your role can be in it. This again is systems thinking. It rarely is the case that people in power one day wake up and say, you know what, we need to be running the world in a more equitable way, or we need to give more rights to women, or we need to improve education. Let's make this happen. Change happens because many different people are moving, they're pushing in the same direction at once. And so I encourage you to look at the issues you care about in your community and not just do what I said about understanding all of the things, all of the forces that are creating the challenges or the problem, but rather to look at all of the ways you have power in your systems. Look at your social change toolkit. We saw just last Friday when millions of young people around the world went on strike for climate change. What does that do? Did we stop climate change that day? No, but we raised awareness of it in ways people have not been aware of before. So that's an example of how going on strike, doing protests, raising awareness is so important. But is it the whole picture? No. What then has to happen is people who care about that issue or any other issue then have to go back home, and they have to talk to people in their networks and in their families, in their villages, in their cities, to bring that knowledge to more people. But that's not enough either. Then you need to look at the power structure. Wherever you live, where are you powerful as a young person? Is it as an educator? Is it how you vote? Is it how you engage in your local political system? Is it how you influence policymakers or the people who hold power locally or regionally or nationally? Is it what you can do as a consumer? Can you stop buying products from corporations that are not behaving the way you want, or from local businesses that you know are not supporting the issues that you care about? So my point is that you have so much power as an individual in society if you understand your role, if you understand your toolkit. And it's different in different environments. It's going to look different in Nigeria than it looks in the United States, than it looks in Australia, than it looks in France. Right? So I'm not saying that I know what your toolkit is, but I know that you have one. And your ability to wield it with as much power as you possibly can comes from you stepping back and figuring out what those powers, what those levers of power are that you can press on. The work that you're doing now, pursuing your education, learning how to do these projects, is phenomenal because you're building out your intellectual and professional toolkits. And that's going to allow you to execute the work that you're doing really effectively. But I want you to think more expansively than that about the ways that you can engage all of your power as a citizen, as a member of whatever community you occupy, and then to help others see that. I truly believe that the combination of how we use our voices and how we simply show up, how we vote, how we engage in constructive conversations about politics, how we hold our leaders accountable, how we use our consumer dollars. All of those things together are what we need to be doing to really push forward the kinds of change we need to address the issues of your generation. So think of yourself as being more powerful than you probably, and then commit to identifying all of the ways in which you have power. It might seem small. Your vote, your conversation with a neighbor, your decision to perhaps use less water or to use public transportation, or whatever it means to be active in your community. It may seem insignificant, but if enough of us are doing that together, that's where our collective power comes from. And that's what I would love to see all of you doing.
Thank you, Rebecca. It was wonderful. I would ask all the fellows that if they have any question which they want to be addressed by Ms. Rebecca, please write down in the chat box. Um, Ms. Riccio, there is this one common question which has come up. many fellows have asked that how can they motivate the co-fellows or team members who are not very much involved in the community work. So how can they motivate or encourage other people to join in the project?
So I think this is a challenge that many of us have. I will say I'm often frustrated by how few people in my personal network are getting up and being active with me. So how do we get anyone anywhere, whether they're a member of our team or a member of our community, to get involved? A lot of this is about perspective taking. People don't respond well to being made to feel guilty. They don't respond well to being made to feel like they're lazy or that they're uninformed or that they're disinterested. So I think that when we are trying to change other people's behavior, because that's essentially what we're trying to do. We think we're trying to inspire them. We think we're trying to create opportunities to make a difference. But really what we're trying to do is to get them to change their behavior. And so imagine the situations in which somebody who was trying to get you to do something that wasn't a priority for you or that you weren't invested in, and what works for you. I think it's important to look at the world from their perspective. This is where that empathy and perspective taking is so important. Engage the person in conversation about what matters to them, about what else they're trying to balance in their life, how you can create perhaps a smaller piece of work that can be meaningful for them to do. Assume that they give them the benefit of the doubt, but then make sure that you're offering them an opportunity or a value proposition, right? Sometimes we call this the value proposition. What is it that you're offering them? What is it that you're asking them to do? And does it resonate with their values? Does it resonate with their understanding of the issue? Does it resonate with their priorities? How can you make them see, how can you incentivize them to understand how important their contribution can be? How can you help them recognize whatever those obstacles might be? Can you problem solve with them around whatever it is that's keeping them from being engaged the way you had hoped they would want to be? And perhaps it's keeping them from being engaged they want to be. I think those kinds of doing it from a position of empathy, from opportunity, from caring about what might be keeping them from being their most engaged self, and helping them feel appreciated and welcome is a much better strategy, because I know that our impulse can be to get frustrated. You know, I often find myself thinking people are too apathetic. People aren't doing enough. Why don't people see what's going on right now? And I recognize that those are my feelings. If I project that frustration or anger or whatever it is on other people, I have lost them, right? We have to be winning people over. We have to be bringing them in as partners, as friends, as collaborators. We have to share with them our hope and our optimism and our opportunity, because we already don't have enough people doing the work of changing the world. We can't afford to lose the ones who are disengaging or who aren't doing as much as we want them to by making them angry with us or making them feel isolated or not appreciated. So that's what I would say. If we're our best selves when we're dealing with them, hopefully we can help them become their best selves.
Thank you. Next, okay, Miss Hania Hernandez had a question that Ms. Riccio, what exactly your project is about?
What exactly my project is about? So if by that you mean what are we doing here in the Social Impact Lab,
Yes.
my research is about teaching people who teach how to do that better. So I feel like right now teachers should be preparing young people for lives that are going to be defined by a lot of disruption because of climate change and technology and global changes in politics and economics. And so my project is about creating teaching models that allow teachers to help their students become better complex problem solvers, so better systems thinkers, and also people who appreciate the values that make us more ethical in the way we think about problem solving. So many of the issues that we care about and so many of the issues that are going to become increasingly challenging in the future are about scarcity of resources and the viability and sustainability of communities that are at risk. And so I feel like we need to be thinking more about our mutual responsibilities to each other as we manage resources moving forward. So how we teach that is incredibly important to me.
So Dennis had a question that
So
how
my
do we get resources or funds for our project from other stakeholders or friends?
Oh, I see it. Yes. How do we mobilize resources and funds from our project stakeholders and friends? All right. So a couple of things about this. The first thing, I think, before you ask anyone for money for anything having to do with social change, the first thing to make sure is that you know exactly how much funding you need and why, how you're going to be use it. So have a very good budget and be able to demonstrate that you have the mechanisms in place to keep that money safe and to use it soundly. So what are your oversight mechanisms for your financial management? Because what you're trying to do is to demonstrate to other people that the need is real, that you understand what it's going to cost, and that you are a responsible steward, that you are a responsible caretaker of their money. And then finally, that you are going to hold yourself accountable for the outcomes of your project. So you should be presenting somebody not with a request for funding. You should be presenting them with an opportunity to make a difference and proving to them how it is that giving you money is going to make the difference. It's a very different thing. When we go to people asking them for something, it again kind of can trigger a concern or I don't know, resistance, because they feel like they're always getting asked for money. So instead of asking them for something, offer them something. The opportunity to use their money to make a difference on something that you can give them a lot of assurance is going to actually happen. It's a very different way of thinking about fundraising. It empowers the donor, not because of their money, but because of their partnership with you. It also means that you have to have a thick skin because not everybody's going to say yes. So that's how I suggest you go to individuals. When you're going to institutions for money, whether it's a foundation or a local business, or whether you're seeking money from a public agency or a government donor or something like that, make sure you do your homework about what they fund and why, because they typically have very clear agendas for what that money is allocated for. And you're better off doing more research on them first to identify the places that are likely to find what you are doing a good fit for what they're trying to accomplish. It's often the case that if somebody who's in control of resources has a very fixed agenda about what they're going to do with that money, if the board of trustees or the board members or government officials have already allocated that money for a specific purpose, they might not even have the permission to allocate it to you for something else. So do your homework and then make sure that you're aligning it with what they're interested in.
Thank you. Mohammed Altiyar from Yemen, you had a question. Would you like to unmute yourself and please ask the question?
I think I see Mohammed's question. Are you referring to the one that says, what is your advice in overcoming obstacles and implementing projects in a country crowned by conflicts and wars?
Yes.
First of all, I want to honor how important that question is. And I want to make sure that all of us in our community recognize that some of our members are facing extraordinary challenges, risks to their health and their safety and the peace and security of their country all the time. And to be making the effort to be part of this community when that is what you are dealing with on a day-to-day basis is an extraordinary act of courage and hope. And I want to thank you for that, first of all. I also want to say that staying safe, keeping yourself and your family safe, should always be your priority. And learning how to navigate the risks you're taking by trying to engage in social change is going to be very different case by case. So some of the things I would encourage you to do is, first of all, never assume that because you're young, you're safe. I assume you know that, but that is clearly not the case in many environments. The second thing I would say to you is to find people that you trust who may have some more experience than you do, who can share their wisdom and experience, because being as informed as possible about the risks that exist is absolutely essential to protecting yourself. And then I would also I would encourage all of you to have a personal, do a personal risk assessment. Be clear about what the risks are, understand what you can afford to risk and what your family can afford to risk, what you're willing to do. And if you are going to take those risks, make sure you understand the consequences and make sure you're choosing to do them for very good reasons. Because we know that in some cases they can be quite severe.
Thank you, Rebecca. There's a question from Eric Moriti who is asking that how do you help people who tell you that you don't understand what they are going through? Like the community is not able to connect with the volunteers, with the people who are trying to help them. Because I have come across people who tell me that I don't understand the situation and the ground reality is different.
Mm-hmm. So my connection was a little bit fuzzy there. So I just want to make sure I understand the question, which is how to engage with people when they are telling you that you don't understand their situation.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the question.
I think one of the most important aspects of doing this work in a socially just way is to always hear the words that people are telling us. If that is what they are saying, that is what they believe, that is what they're feeling, that's what they are experiencing in the moment. And you have to accept that at face value. The question is, if someone feels that way, what opportunity do you have not to tell them what to do or not to convince them that you in fact do know what they're going through? Because honestly, we are only experts in our own lives. Each of us is only an expert in our own life. And even when somebody is close to us, in our home, in our town, in our village, in our community, we have a better sense of what their lived experience is than someone else might, but we're still not an expert in that person's life. So if you're hearing from someone that you don't know what my lived experience is, it's true. You can't possibly know. So what can we do? We can become very good active listeners. We can say, I hear that. I trust in what you're saying. What I would like to do is learn from you. Can you please help me understand how you're experiencing this issue? What is your perception of this issue? What do you believe are the causes or the opportunities to address it? And is there a way in which you can help me become better at engaging in a world and in a life and in an approach to problem solving that lifts both of us up? I think that perspective, that we are learning from each other all the time in order to lift all of us up, assumes that the best we can do is listen and learn from other people, never go in and assume that we understand how the world looks from their perspective.
Yes, it is true, because many a time it happens that when you look from a different perspective, you cannot obviously understand what they are going through, because lived experience are different from what a person will see as an outsider. So the next question is from Emmanuel. He wants you to educate us more on project management skills.
A project, okay. So When I talk about project management skills, I always use this, this example. Imagine that you and your family or you and your friends decide so today is Wednesday, right? What if we decided that we want to have a big party on Saturday, okay, a few days from now? We don't just say, oh, we're going to have a party, let's go buy the food, right? You don't do that. What do? You imagine in your head what a successful party would look like, the kind of feeling you want it to have, who should be around the table with you. Is everyone bringing and sharing food? Are you making food together? Do you want it to be out there for everyone to participate in when they arrive? Will there be music? Will there be dancing? Will it be quiet? Will it be inside? Will it be outside, right? You have an image in your mind of what success will look like, and then you plan backwards from that. You think about who you need to contact, where will it be, whose house will it be at, then what kind of food, what kind of music. Project management is very much the same. Once you're very clear about what the problem is, once you've gotten that perspective of the stakeholders, once you're confident that you know what work needs to be done, ask yourself, what will success look like? How will I know that I have responsibly used the funds given to me, that I have thoughtfully and ethically done this work, that we have engaged people properly and have achieved certain outcomes? You need to know what success looks like. Another saying I like to say is, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there. You need to know where you're going so that you can work backwards from there to what the benchmarks are along the way. What are the signposts along the way, your path to success, that let you know you're getting to where you want to be? And then get even more granular, even more detailed, because this approach of being exhaustive in your backwards planning and setting benchmarks for yourself, setting dates when you want to accomplish them, being clear about whose responsibility it is your roadmap to success. Now, coming up with that roadmap to success does not guarantee that everything's going to go just the way you planned. Life happens. There can be natural disasters. There can be weather problems. Somebody on your team could get sick. Somebody who promised funding can pull it out. But what happens is, once you've got that roadmap and you know what you're doing and you've broken it all down into the steps, if something goes wrong, because you've thought so fully about everything that you need to accomplish, you're going to be able to come up with a better plan B. So come up with a plan, hold yourself accountable, hold the people on your team accountable, and make sure that you're frequently looking back or reviewing if you're on track or if you need to make adjustments. I think that's my biggest advice about project management.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. It will be very useful for us. Odinaka Kingsley.
Okay, I am Odinaka Kingsley Obeta from the University of Jos, Nigeria. Rebecca, thank you for the presentation. My question is, I've actually started my Millennium Fellowship project, and it's titled Block Malaria Project. I am bent on educating secondary school students on malaria, and recently, because of the yellow fever outbreak in this part of the country, I've decided to also incorporate yellow fever as part of the item that I'll be educating the general public on. So, but I've come to understand that the students are really not having the knowledge of yellow fever, and they don't even have the knowledge of malaria, because according to one of the teachers, it's not included in their curriculum, so they don't teach the students. And the students, sometimes get affected by these diseases, and some of them end up even dying in some instances. So I want to ask, how can I approach the Ministry of Education, those in charge of the education in this part of the country, to see how they can incorporate these health issues in the curriculum of the secondary school students and help educate them on how to prevent some of these endemic diseases? Thank you so much.
Yes. So I think people will be frustrated by my answer to this question, but this is, in my experience over many years, this has been my experience, that it's rarely the case in any government structure that I have ever experienced that going straight to the top and trying to get them to work down is effective. that it is often more effective to get allies closer to you. You know, if you imagine, let's imagine that you're in the center of a circle, and there are layers of increasing magnitude of the way the Ministry of Health works. Each of those layers has people who have responsibilities and who have a certain amount of power and who feel like they have control over what happens in their circle. So what I suggest you do, for any of you who are trying to navigate this kind of sort of bureaucratic system, institutional bureaucracies, which exist everywhere, is to start close to you with an ally who understands the politics and the relationships and how they work to navigate it. I think one of the worst things we can do when we're trying to effect change that can be a little bit disruptive within institutions is to push too high, too hard, too fast, and then there's a backlash against us. And we can unintentionally annoy people who have power, we can get them angry at us, we can get them to shut us down. And so sometimes those efforts have to be more incremental as you build relationships and build trust. Maybe you start at a smaller level with a pilot, and you do that with the help of a mentor or somebody who can sort of give you a little, who can extend sort of their credibility or their power within the system, even if it's relatively low on the hierarchy. And you build that relationship incrementally. Otherwise, as I said, if you jump in too high, you risk alienating everybody lower or closer to you in ways that can be very, very difficult to restore those relationships once you have broken them. So do a network analysis or a stakeholder analysis of who has decision-making power, who has financial power, and how they make decisions, and make sure that you're not going against the system in a way that's going to come back to bite you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Since we are running out of time, we would take the last question. Just Bang, you had a question. Would you like to ask it? Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hi. Well, my question actually is two. First one is like how best do we evaluate the needs of the community and gather that information? Just do you have any advice for that one? And my another question is like, you know, in my own project, I always feeling like it's very hard to influence like other people. Like we always influence people who really care about the specific question. Like for example, we explain the climate change to other people, but someone just simply don't care, even though you explain with detailed information, facts, they don't believe that. So it's because I study management. So like many theories saying like people always believe what they want to believe. So sometimes we just thinking like, do we really can influence people who don't care that? Thanks.
So, all right. So here's what I'm going to say. You're right. We can't influence people who don't care. And we don't know why they don't care. I think it's important to recognize that there are lots of reasons people don't care. Maybe their child is so ill, they just don't have time. Maybe they didn't have the privilege of any kind of education. Maybe they really are just selfish. I mean, like maybe they're just not great people. Whatever it is, that's their lived experience. As I keep saying, we can't know. So then you have to think about, okay, I have limited time. I have limited resources. Spending 10 hours talking with somebody who's not going to change their mind is not a good use of my resources. Better to find the 10 people who you can influence and figure out what is it that 10 people are able to do than to spend hours and hours trying to influence people who never get involved. Because the small group of people, a small group of people can be very powerful if they're putting their time and their voice and their energy in the right lever of change. So that is what I would tell you, is to think about who you know is on your side. Think about all of the skills and time and energy and knowledge that you've got. Those are your assets. That's your toolkit. Then look at that map I mentioned before of what can you do? Can you change the way people are consumers? Can you work on social media to influence other people who maybe you can change? Can you offer classes? Can you make appointments with leaders? Right? There are so many ways to make a difference, but you have to find the right fit between the actual resources that you've got and those levers of change. They don't all fit well, but lots of them do. And so that's what you're looking for. The magic intersection, the powerful intersection between the right lever of change and the assets you have at your disposal. But don't waste time on the people who you just can't influence. Work with the people who are already there. If you can't influence people, fine, but make sure you have a benchmark for when you're going to stop working on that person, because that's a waste of time we can't afford.
Thank you, Rebecca, so much. It's actually very true that when we are working on a project, we become so much connected to it that we expect everyone to feel connected to the project in the same way, or in the community in the same way. So we sometimes end up putting our energy on influencing people who are not easily influenced. So yeah, it is very rightly pointed by you that we should put our energy and efforts in the positive and right direction. So that's a wrap for all the questions. Thank you so much, Rebecca, for taking the time to share your experiences with us.
Such a pleasure. I'm going to type my Twitter handle here. I don't tweet that much, but I will be more in the coming months. Is my Twitter handle. And then I'm going to put my email address here. I'm going to be really honest though. I have many, many students here and many, many projects. So it's possibly the case that you won't hear back from me right away, but please write in the subject matter, Millennium Fellow, and then your name, so that I can keep track of the questions coming in, and I will do my best to get to you as soon as I can.
Thank you for that, because yes, a lot of us have a lot of questions, because still questions are popping up. So yes, thank you for that.
And what I'll try to do is, if you get me questions within the next 24 hours, I will look at all of them and try to see the themes, and then I'll work with MCN and perhaps write some basic answers up that hit as many as possible, rather than one by one.
Thank you again for the amazing talk. I'd also like to thank all the Millennium Fellows who joined the webinar today. I hope you were able to gain some great insights, and we look forward to see you all again on our second webinar next Wednesday with none other than MCN's Executive Director, Sam Vagar. You can register on the crew or on the Millennium Fellowship website, Millennium Fellows org/Millennium Webinar.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.